Welcome to Salisbury University On the Air, a program highlighting the activities and the people of the campus. My name is Susan Purnell. For nearly 9 decades, Salisbury University has been a part of the fabric of the Delmarva community. With the President's Distinguished Community Leadership Awards, the university celebrates other organizations and individuals who have helped make the Eastern Shore a better place to live. Today, we spotlight this year's individual winner, Tony Sarbanes, and organizational winner, Coastal Hospice and Palliative Care. Joining us first is Mr. Sarbanes. Welcome, Tony.
Good morning.
It's hard for me to call you Tony, and you know that.
Yeah, but that's a long history.
Yeah, it is. He was
years.
my principal, and I have to say that in the last few years you've said, please call me Tony, and every time I think of you as Mr. Sarbanes. So I'm going to try to do better during this interview.
Yeah, you've gotten better at it.
I've got a little bit better. I think I turned 60 and then said, okay, you really can call him
okay
Tony.
now.
Yeah. So I guess most people do remember you principally as a principal, or at least an educator. Tell us a little bit about that experience and why you got into that career.
Well, the basic reason I went into education, I wanted to coach high school basketball.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people didn't know that. I had a desire to do that, and the only way to coach it was I had to be a teacher. So I did. I coached basketball for 2 years at Y High. I was 31-7 after 2 years. I got that out of my system. And then Boyd Mahaffey, who was in the superintendent of schools, asked me to be a vice principal at Wicomico, what was then Wicomico Junior High School. Mm-hmm. Then I went to Bennett. Then I went back to Y High as a principal. And I opened Parkside. And I have to admit that in my education career, I loved it all, but opening Parkside was a real treat because you don't get to do that every day.
Right.
You're the first principal. You're there to establish what you hope is a very high standard. And I was blessed at Parkside. I had a great faculty, great student body, and the parents were really super. It was just a great experience. I was there 5 years, mm-hmm. and I've always placed that at the top in my education career, although I really loved all of it. I really thoroughly enjoyed being around young people and sharing activities with them and everything.
And you were good at it.
Well, thank you very much.
I can tell you from first-hand experience, you truly were.
Thank you very much, yeah.
I think a lot of people also remember you as a Wicomico County Council person.
Right.
Tell me about that experience and some of the most important things that you feel you accomplished during that time.
Well, it was interesting. I ran once and lost in 1994. Huh. I lost to one of my former students, for goodness sakes. But
Did
anyhow,
you?
Yeah.
Who was that?
Rusty Molnar.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, and I ran in that district, and I lost by 63 votes. Well, I waited till 2002, and then I ran at large, and did very well in the voter turnout, and I've always been appreciative that the voters supported me the way they did. And then I became president of the county council. It was an interesting council. We had an interesting mix of people. We did a lot of good things together. Unfortunately, people focus on things that we might have disagreed on as opposed to the many things that we did agree on. I think the highlight for me was being an educator. I felt that our number one responsibility, and I still think it is for the local county council, is education, because that's the biggest part of the county's budget. We were able to do maintenance of effort every year and a little bit more than that. Other things that we did, Billie Jean Jackson Park, we named that. I knew Billie Jean Jackson well. We just lost him. He was a really, really fine gentleman. And he and I had worked together. I had 3 of his kids in school. We worked together on a lot of things, and I just had the highest regard for him. We were able to name a park for him. But funding the school system was the number one priority. We did a lot of things, just keeping the county going. We were the last county council before the county executive.
That's right,
and
you were.
Right after that is when the county executive was elected. So I happened to be the last president of the last county council before the county exec. It was a great experience. I did it for 1 term. My reaction was, I've been there and done that. My wife also had some health issues. I really felt it was time for me, not because that's a full-time job. If you do it right, it's a full-time job. I really felt I needed to be more at home more.
Were you retired at that point?
I was retired.
As an educator?
Right. I had retired as an educator. I actually went in the private sector 13 years.
That's right. I remember you were right across the street at George Miles and Buer.
I worked at George Miles and Buer for 9 of those 13 years. Great experience, great outfit to work with. I still hold them in the highest regard. But I actually retired from George Miles and Buer in the summer of 2002, filed for elected office, got elected, served 4 years, said thank you very much, and then decided I'd do other things.
You've done a lot in your retirement.
Yeah.
I think many of our viewers might not also realize that you were a U.S. Army officer.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Right. Oh, that was a great experience. When I went to Western Maryland College, which is now McDaniel, and all male students, freshmen and sophomore, were required to take Army ROTC. Wasn't a choice. Yeah, we had to take it. Not the women, but the men did. My father was a Navy veteran, and I really thought about I was going to go in the Navy. I wanted to go into service, but I was going to do Navy. Well, I really got enamored with the Army ROTC program. When I graduated, I also was commissioned as a lieutenant in the Army. In my wisdom, I chose Army Infantry, and so I went into service, and I did 2 years of active duty at Fort Benning, Georgia. Well, I had a reserve commitment, and so when I came home, I went into the school system, but I also had to do 3 years in the Army Reserve. I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
How often did you have to go away?
Oh, well, I was gone, a weekend here. Well, 1 weekend every month, and then there were other activities in between. So it was a time-consuming thing. So I had my school position, I had a family, and then I had the military. So it was a very, very busy time. And I'm going to make a plug for my lovely wife, Belly, because frankly, without Belly, I couldn't have done the military and all the other things that I did, because she was very, very supportive. Just a great wife. I married the right person.
You did.
I married the
you
right person. You
absolutely did. Because if you had left me with the children after you'd worked all week and gone away for the weekend to the reserves, I don't know that we would have worked out.
Wouldn't
so
worked
good
out
for you, Billy.
Yeah. And then before you know it, I remember I got to 10 years in the reserve, and I thought, geez, I have 10 years. Another 10, I'll have 20. I was very fortunate. I did a lot of command in the reserve. I enjoyed doing that. And I think that impacted what I did in my civilian life as well, because I enjoyed being responsible and being an administrator. Susan, in the end, I ended up being in Seaford, Delaware, Fort Meade, Maryland, and I spent the last 8 years in the Pentagon. And I was fortunate enough to retire as a Major General, which was a great achievement, because at that point, that's the highest that a reserve officer could go, was Major General. So I had a very, very positive career. I had 33 years active in reserve, and one day they just say, thank you very much, General, it's time for you to retire and go home. I said, thank you very much, I am going home.
Oh, well, so heck with this Mr. Sarbanes, Major General Sarbanes.
Major General Sarbanes.
I love that. That's
Major General
great.
Sarbanes, you never know.
Gosh, you've also been very active in our church, Trinity.
Oh, yeah.
And also, I think people might not realize that you were on the National Council of Christians and Jews.
Right.
Tell me about that aspect of your life.
It's interesting. You mentioned two things, and we all have mentors in our life. When I came home, Sam Seidel had coached my brother in high school basketball, and Sam was a very close personal friend of our family all the way through. Sam said to me, I want you to get involved in the National Conference of Christians and Jews. I said, Sam, what do you want me to do? So I got involved. Next thing you know, he says, well, now I want you to be chairman of the local chapter. Okay, Sam Seidel asked me to do something, I was going to do it. And we had an active group for, I'm going to guess, about 3 years, and then it sort of died away. And that ended that experience, but it was a great experience. People of all backgrounds would get together and discuss various things in the community, or things that we felt were affecting people's lives in the community. Next thing you know, Trinity Church. That is a great experience. I've been the lay leader there now for about 16 years, and I thoroughly love Trinity Church. How did I get involved there? Howard Gordy, who we just lost.
I know. What a great
service
loss.
was Saturday. Had a great service for a great, great man.
Wasn't it?
But he went to high school with my brother. Graduated the same year. Well, he comes to Trinity as a minister, and I was active at Trinity because Billy grew up in that church. I was married in that church. And Howard says to me, you're going to get involved in Trinity. Okay. So I got on the trustees.
You just do what you're told.
Yeah. So here I have Sam Seidel, who says, I want you active in the National Conference of Christian
Right.
Jews. Okay. Howard Gordy says it's time for you to get active at Trinity Church, and I did. And then it has continued after Howard left. Olin Shockley kept me very much involved. John Mitchell did. And of course, I'd had John in school as a student. And John was great young man.
There's so many other community organizations that you've been involved with. Your nominator for the award that you just received from SU said, too numerous to mention. Now, keeping in mind that
Right.
we've only got a 30-minute time period here,
Yeah.
what are some of the other organizations that you've been involved with that
Golly.
you really hold dear to your heart?
Yeah, well, I would rank Trinity right at the top. I thoroughly enjoy Trinity. Others that I've been involved with that I really care about, I've been on the Community Foundation Board. United Way, I've been on that board. I've been recognized by United Way. Salisbury Neighborhood Housing Service that I have the good fortune to chair. We do a lot of good things in the community. Hudson Health. Golly day, the list goes on.
It's
as
too
Terry
numerous to
Green-
mention, as your
Terry
nominee
Green would say. But you know, I've been involved in coaching Salvation Army sports and things like that, and I just like to continue. I really enjoy volunteering.
Now, I also understand, and I've heard from many people, that you're involved sort of in behind the scenes good deeds, such as helping people in need of jobs and for and places to live. And tell me a little bit about that kind of work that you've done.
Well, let me go back to how I got into that. My parents were Greek immigrants, and they always said two things: education, number one; two, give back. It's a great country. Give back. Don't just take, but give back. And then again, I've got to mention my wife because she was very supportive in that. I thoroughly enjoy trying to help people. I do have people who will call me up if they're thinking about doing something. What is my opinion? In fact, I find that interesting sometimes. They'll say, what do you think I ought to do? Or can you help me out with this? And I enjoy saying to them, you need to go talk to so-and-so, or have you done this? I try to be very honest with them. Some people will come in and they want to do something, and I'll say, well, let's look at your resume. Let's look at your background. And then I'll say to them, you know, in all honesty, you need to do 2 or 3 other things before I really think you're qualified to do what you want to do. And I thoroughly enjoy doing that. I've helped people, and that is a reward for just trying to help people out. Sometimes you just need a little bit of encouragement in a positive way to make that big step. And I just enjoy doing that.
Well, I wonder how many people call you mentor.
Yeah.
I
Well, don't
really
know.
do.
Yeah.
They certainly call you the epitome of public service. Those
Yeah.
were the words used. How would you encourage other people to become involved in the community as you have?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's simple to me. One, I think people should be positive. Pick an agency and say, you know, I really like what they do. I really would like to be involved with them. Something that's positive. My goodness, Wicomico County has many, many agencies that are looking for volunteers. The government's looking for volunteers. If it's something that you think you can make a positive contribution to, put your name in. Go for it. Don't sit back and complain. But activities are there. People ought to just decide what they want to do. You know, I'll say to people, pick something out. Many, many agencies in this community, they'd love to have you. You bring a lot to the table. Go for it. Get involved.
I think you and I were very fortunate to have parents who said to us, you know, it is your responsibility to give back.
Right.
And I know when I first moved back here 20 years ago, a friend asked me to a T for Coastal Hospice.
Right.
And I continued to work with Coastal Hospice in a volunteer capacity for about 20 years, and that's my next interview.
Right.
What do you have planned for next? What's your next nut to crack?
Yeah, well, I'm going to continue doing many of the things that I have been doing. You know, I'm going to stay active at church. I still am on several boards that I enjoy working with. And of course, now I have 5 grandchildren. They're all local. I get to watch them in all their activities. I try to give them sage advice, and when I give them sage advice, their eyes gloss over, and all of a sudden they have something else they want to do.
You're just grandpa.
So, yeah, I'm just, it was the old granddad.
That's right.
Old-
But that's
old
good.
back-
It sounds like you have your priorities straight.
Yeah, so family, with my wife, my grandchildren, my own children, and I'm going to continue to do the activities.
Well, I can tell you that you've touched so many people, including myself, over the
Thank you.
years, and I can think of no one more deserving of the award than you, Mr. Tony Sarbanes, Major General.
Yeah, thank you very
Tony
much. I
Sarbanes,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Susan.
And now here's a look at activities scheduled on the campus this summer. Our next guest is Elaine Capon, president of Coastal Hospice and Palliative Care, this year's organizational winner of SU's President's Distinguished Community Leadership Award. So welcome, Elaine.
Morning, Susan.
This
Thank
is a
you.
good day for me. I had two of my favorite people.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about Coastal Hospice for those people who don't know in our audience.
Okay, well, our hospice began in the late 1970s from a group of volunteers who heard about the philosophy of hospice. And hospice philosophy is one that takes care of more than a person's symptoms when they have a very serious or life-limiting illness. And we provide care that takes care of the emotional and the spiritual aspects of someone's journey through that illness.
Well, it's meant a lot to me. As you know, I've been involved with Coastal Hospice since I came back to Salisbury. But more importantly, you all helped my mother and my father in the last days of their lives. Tell us a little bit more about the kind of services that you do provide to these people.
And first, before I forget, I would like to say that this award is really a wonderful honor and a great testament to the dedication of the staff that we have and volunteers who provide this care every day, for they're the ones who make the difference in the families' lives, as you know.
You are right. The heroes are the people that sit daily by the
Exactly.
sides of the beds of people with terminal illnesses and help them get through this really terrible time of their lives.
Exactly. So what we do, our staff, which is comprised of different team members of different professions, they try to find out what that patient's goals are or that family's goals are and to help them meet that in their last months. So for example, someone's goal might be to stay at home, didn't want to go to a hospital, didn't want to go to a nursing home. So our aides would be there to help with some of the personal care and take that off of the family. To meet the goal of symptom control, our registered nurses will work with the patient's doctor, and when they visit, they'll make sure that the medications are there, that the symptoms are in control. They'll talk with the doctor. A goal for a patient might be to explore their spirituality or their relationship with God, and so the chaplains on the team will help them address that. There may be issues of finding some resources for the family. Sometimes an illness like this interrupts the family's finances. Somebody may have to stay home to care for the person who used to be working. And so the social workers will help find resources in the community. They will also help with some of the emotional issues. It might be, how do we talk to the grandchildren about what's going on with grandma? Or it might be,
Or even the patient.
Or the patient. Maybe the patient's relationship with a sister has been severed years ago and they want to try to mend that. Or it might just be the normal emotions, that roller coaster of emotions that people go through and needing to talk to someone. And so the social workers will help with that, as will the volunteers. And our volunteers will help additionally with staying with the patient, so the family might be able to get out of the house for a while, and some distraction. They might go and play cards with the patient to just be a friend, because sometimes friends are uncomfortable when someone is that ill, and sometimes they don't come around as much. And so the volunteers are a very important piece.
That's what we found with my mom, and she had dementia. So a lot of people didn't know how to talk to her, and the Coastal Hospice volunteers were so good because they're used to people like that.
Sure.
It's a real skill set,
And they're trained.
and they're trained to do
they're
so.
trained, yeah.
Wow. Now, I know in the last couple of years you have a couple of new programs that I'm unfamiliar with. One is called Coastal Kids Supportive Care. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, we're very pleased with that. Coastal Hospice has always served children, but with the passing of the Affordable Care Act, one of the provisions was that children could continue to have very aggressive disease-reversing treatment while they had hospice. Now, normally for adults have to have made a decision to stop aggressive treatment and choose to have treatment based on comfort because aggressive treatments are no longer working. For parents, that's a very hard decision to make.
Yes.
And so for children, we can provide all the benefits of hospice services and our whole team of people to help support the emotions of those parents, of those kids and siblings, while addressing the symptoms, and they can still go to their appointments at Johns Hopkins and have their chemotherapy or have other aggressive treatments separate from the hospice benefit. And so we've seen an increased need for services for children. So we have a designated team of people who are trained and know how to care for children and their families. And we're part of a state network, the Kids Alliance, so that we share best practices in caring for hospice care for children.
Oh, I think that's remarkable. That was the one thing that kind of used to bother me, because I knew you had to sign something when you signed up for Coastal Hospice saying that you weren't going to do, is it curative
Correct,
measures?
yeah.
But with a child, I know as a parent, I know I would probably never sign that, because I'm going to always be looking for that miracle, that something that might work. So I get that, and that's great that you can do that. I didn't realize that had become sort of a law.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. Another new initiative is called the Compass Program. What's that?
Compass is a volunteer-based program, and we have a chaplain who is heading it up and managing it. Sometimes we get a referral for hospice when it's a little too early. One of the Medicare rules is that a person has to have approximately a 6-month prognosis to go on hospice care under Medicare. And most insurances follow that rule, although not all. So sometimes we get a referral for somebody and it's a little bit early. Well, this way we can connect them to volunteers, and we connect them to other supports in the community, and our chaplain manager continues to visit them, and we can monitor for changes. And when something starts to decline, we're there, we can see it, and we can refer them back into hospice at the right time. The other thing that happens is sometimes we'll have somebody on hospice, like your mom, for example, who has a disease or a diagnosis that's a little harder to predict.
Correct.
That 6 months, and dementia is one of those. And when they get the support of hospice and they have all that extra attention, they do really well. And there comes a point when the doctors say, maybe this isn't a 6-month prognosis anymore. And we call it graduate from hospice. We have to discharge from hospice for a while until something changes. And so this Compass program then picks up those people, and the volunteer stays in place. Again, our manager, Mark, will continue to keep in touch with the family and the patient, and we will connect them with other resources as they need, so that we're not just dropping them into a hole, but they've
Right.
got a support network still in place until it's time for them to have hospice
Well,
again.
I think it's such a great program in that at least you are able to help them when that time comes, when that 6-month prognosis is upon them. You know, a lot of people, I remember when I was on the board of hospice, one of the things we worried about is that people didn't know enough to call, you know, earlier, and we would have people in hospice for 2 days or 2 weeks instead of the 6 months where they would have had the benefits, all the benefits of hospice.
That's right, and that's still one of the biggest issues, is that many of our patients and families come to us in the last week of life. And although we can do a lot of good work and we follow that family for at least a year in bereavement afterwards and bereavement support, we do our best work when we're in there at a time when the patient can still make relationships with volunteers and when they can still explore a spiritual journey with a chaplain and when they can build that trust with the nurse and know that at 2 in the morning when there's a problem, a nurse will be there. And we have separate teams of people for those off hours, those outside of business hours, so they are on and ready to roll at any time of day or night.
Wow. How many patients do you serve each year here?
The last several years, we've served over 1,000 patients in hospice care
Per year?
per year.
Per year, that's a lot. You also have an inpatient facility
We
at Deer's
do.
Head.
Yes, we lease a wing at Deer's Head Hospital, and that is a unit for extreme symptom control. It's designed to be short stay. Again, Medicare and Medicaid and most insurance kind of define that.
Correct.
But when somebody is not able to have their symptoms well controlled at home and adjusting the medications is more than a family member can realistically do, then the inpatient unit is there. We've got registered nurses 24/7. We have a physician there every single day, and our physicians are on call all the time. And so we can provide a real intense level of care. It's like the hospice hospital, if you would.
But with
And-
a hospice environment. I mean, it's very
Exactly.
lovely over there. You don't feel as institutional as you might in
Right.
a hospital
And
room.
we have carpeted hallways, so the sound is lower. We keep the lights in the hallway a little low. We've got a beautiful garden room, a nice family area for families to sit and talk with each other.
Yes, I've been over there for many of my friends' parents who have spent some time there, and they've all, everyone that I've ever suggested that they should go there has thanked me for it because of the experience that they've had. It's just a dignified way of spending the last days of your life and without pain. Now, speaking of pain, most people know what hospice care is, but they don't understand the second half of your name, your company's name. It's Coastal Hospice and Palliative Care. What is palliative care?
Besides being a long word.
A very long word that I've just learned to pronounce.
Palliative care shares a lot of the philosophy of hospice. Palliative care literally means to cloak, and so its focus is symptom control as well as that holistic, spiritual, emotional, holistic way of approaching a disease and symptoms. The difference is that palliative care can be given at any time during a disease process, right from the beginning when you're first starting treatment. Again, it is for people with a very serious illness that can be life-limiting, but it can be given at any time. It is
So they don't have to have that 6-month prognosis to be given palliative?
correct.
Okay.
And they can be in very active treatment. Now, it is not paid for the same way that hospice
Okay.
is, and so it's not a well-designed program under Medicare. But we partner with Peninsula Regional Medical Center to provide palliative care services at the hospital and for cancer patients in an outpatient clinic. And we also provide some consultations on our own at the Holly Center at Deer's Head and at a few of our area nursing homes, Anchorage and Salisbury Genesis as well. And our physician will make visits and make recommendations, as well as our nurse practitioners. And at Peninsula Regional, we have a full-time social worker over there in addition, and their pastoral counseling team dovetails in with our team to help provide that holistic care.
So, who would recommend to someone at the hospital that they might seek out Coastal Hospice's palliative care?
The physician would
Okay.
write an order for it. We
Okay.
work under physician's orders for
Got
that.
it. All right, I didn't
So a family
understand
could
that.
ask, if a family was interested, the family could ask the doctor for that.
Okay. Now, what do you see in the future for Coastal Hospice? What's coming up?
Well, one of our big goals is to build a hospice residence and outreach center. Coastal Hospice at the Lake is like a hospice hospital, but we see that there are many patients who live alone, who have maybe retired down here and don't have family nearby and are not in a good care situation, but they want to stay in a home-like setting. And so we want to build a hospice home, a residential facility, which we are currently fundraising for. And this is going to be a place that will be a safe home for people who don't have a caregiver support in their family.
I think
in
there's
the
a
area.
great need in this area. We have certainly an aging population, and I think it's down in Berlin that you're thinking, or
Yes,
Ocean City
Northern
area.
Worcester County.
Okay,
Yeah, Northern
and that's
Worcester
where
County.
the great concentration of those kinds of people are, I would think.
It is, and that's why we chose that area, but it will serve patients from all 4 counties. And we've had examples of people who live in Dorchester County, which we also serve, who have needed this facility and would go there as well.
How far along are you?
We are a little over $3 million in our $5 million campaign. We're at about
That's
3.2
great.
million. So we're getting very close.
Yes. Oh, that's
And
great.
there's been a lot of activity recently.
And there's
so
a lot of naming opportunities available, aren't there, for
There
those
are.
people who might want to help out with this?
there are, absolutely.
Well, I'm
We
sure
still
we
have-
all can think of someone who would benefit from that kind of a facility. Finally, if anyone has any questions about Coastal Hospice and palliative care, what's the best way to reach out to you?
One good way is to call, and the number is 410-742-8732, or on the web, coastalhospice.org.
Since the theme of our show has been community leadership, how can people get involved with Coastal Hospice in the community?
We always need volunteers, and volunteers can help in all kinds of capacities. There's certainly patient care volunteers that will help patients and families, but beyond that, we have a thrift shop that is raising the funds to help support our residents, our future residents, and we need thrift shop volunteers.
And thrift shop donations.
And thrift shop donations. We can always use volunteer help for events or for the office. If somebody doesn't want to do patient care, but they have a skill that they could help us in the office, there's always that need as well. Donations are always a help, and whether that you can designate that either be for patient care, we do over $500,000 in charity care every year.
That's a very important point that we haven't brought up. No matter your ability to pay, Coastal Hospice will come and take care of you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Insurance or no insurance, we're there
So $500,000 worth of care given
every year.
every year. Well, it's incredible. I have to thank you for what Coastal Hospice has meant to me and to my family and to so many families out there. You all are so deserving of this award. I was thrilled when I saw that you had won it.
Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Susan.
Such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank my guests, Tony Sarbanes, individual winner of this year's SU President's Distinguished Community Leadership Award, and Elaine Capon, president of Coastal Hospice and Palliative Care, the organizational recipient. I'm Susan Purnell, and this has been Salisbury University on the Air. Enjoy your summer, and thank you for watching.